In this next section, we focus on short-term financing and long-term financing. So, there are different types of short-term financing. There's a secured loan, unsecured loan, and a line of credit. A secured loan is a loan that there is some type of collateral, typically an asset used to back that payment. So the loan is not repaid, then that collateral belongs to the person who loaned you the money. With an unsecured loan, there's not any collateral to protect the lender in that situation. With a line of credit, it means that a company is given a line where they can spend up to a certain dollar amount, and then those funds have to be repaid back to the lender. Commercial finance and companies are what we call non deposit type organizations. That pretty much means that they're making short term loans to the borrowers who will use some type of tangible assets, such as property, equipment, etc., as collateral to secure those loans. So, for example, if you have a mortgage, what is the collateral on that mortgage loan? Yes, you guessed it, it is the actual property. So, in the case of what we call default on that loan, the lender has the right to foreclose, which means take possession of your property. Okay? Another option for companies to obtain short term financing is what's called factoring account receivable. Factoring means that the company is going to sell their account receivable to what we call a market intermediary, which would be a financial institution that will purchase those receivables, but they're going to charge them to do that. So if we cannot borrow money from the bank, selling our receivables may be another option to receive financing. Commercial paper is a loan between two business organizations, not a bank. Typically, with commercial paper, it is unsecured, promissory note in amounts of $100,000 or more that come due in 270 days or less. So this is short-term financing. Since it's unsecured, only financially stable firms can sell it. So if Company A does commercial paper with Company B, it's because they probably have a relationship with that company. They trust that they're going to pay the money back, and they have signed a promissory note. Credit cards are also used as a option for short-term financing. Estimated that one-third of all small firms use credit cards to finance their business. So if we need inventory, assets, etc., we can use credit cards. Now, credit cards are convenient, but they can be costly. These are just some other ways to start up capital. Join a crowdfunding site, set out microfinancing, use asset based lending. This one here is funny. Sweet talk vendors you want to do business with. Not sure it's going to work. And you can also, for a small business, ask family and friends to invest into your business organization. Okay? Now, this is the reason why companies fail to raise capital. There is no formalized business plan to show need or a plan for returning on investment. If you're going to the bank to borrow money or going to an investor, please make sure you have a business plan showing what are your needs and how you plan to repay those funds. The company does not know how much to request from a lender. So you can't go to the bank and say, I need to borrow money, but I'm not sure how much money I need. No, know how much money you need to borrow from the bank before going to the lender. If you have poor credit, that can keep you from getting a loan. If your company is overvalued, saying it's worth more than what it really is, or it could be undervalued, saying that it's actually worth less than what it really is, that can hinder your ability to get financing. And your goals from a growth perspective may be unrealistic. So if you're trying to borrow money and you're saying that we're growing 1,000% each week, yeah, that's not realistic. So those factors can lead to you not receiving financing. Now, when we talk about long-term financing, time period longer than 1 year, financial manager generally going to ask these type of questions. What are the organizational long-term goals and objectives? What funds do we need to achieve those goals and objectives? What sources of long-term funding are available and which will best fit our need? So there's different types of long-term financing. We'll begin with debt financing. When you hear the term debt, it means that you're borrowing money, often from some type of lending institution. The loans can be from a time period of 3 to 7 years or longer, such as 15 to 20 years. There are different type of loan agreement. With a term loan agreement, you sign a promissory note, a written contract that requires the borrower to repay the loan in specified installments. So you could be paying monthly, you might be paying annually, depending upon the actual terms of that agreement. An advantage is that when you borrow money, the interest that you pay on the loan, it is tax deductible. Okay? Now there's a risk return trade-off, meaning that the greater the risk of the lender in making that loan, the higher the interest rate. So typically, if you have a poor credit score, you're going to end up paying a higher interest rate when you borrow money. Another way to obtain long-term finance is from the issuance of bonds. Bonds are a form of long-term debt. They're like an IOU with a promise to repay the amount borrowed along with interest on a certain date. So bonds may be for a time period from 1 year to maybe 20 years, which typically with the bonds, you're going to make maybe a interest payment on an annual basis, but not pay the principal amount back until the bond actually matures. If a bond is secured, there will be collateral such as real estate. If the bond is unsecured, then you only have the reputation of the issuer, hoping that that company will pay the bond as that bond becomes due. Here we have a picture of the beautiful stadium for the Texas Rangers, who just won the World Series. And the state of Texas, or the city of Arlington, actually issued state bonds to help finance the construction of this stadium. So, do you know of any organizations in your community that have issued bonds? And if so, for what purpose? Please email me your response. Okay? Another way of obtaining financing, what we call equity financing. Equity means you're selling ownership into your business. So when a company sells stock, that's equity financing. If using their retained earnings, that's equity financing. Another option is what we call venture capital. That's when a company or individual invests money in new or emerging companies that are perceived as having great potential, profit potential. So if someone believes in your idea for a new business, they may actually fund your new company. That's known as a venture capital. But in exchange, they're going to have some type of ownership percentage into your business. Now, it's important for leverage. Leverage focuses on the raising needs funds through borrowing to increase the firm's rate of return. What we're saying here is that we're going to borrow money. However, we feel that we could get a higher return off those funds used than what we're paying to actually borrow the money. So the cost of capital is the rate of return a company must earn in order to meet the demands of its lenders and expectations of its equity holders. Okay? So, difference between debt and equity financing. So, when you have debt financing, of course, debt has to be repaid. All right? So, that debt will have a maturity date saying when the debt actually becomes due. The interest is going to be tax deductible. Compared to equity financing, you're now selling ownership interest is not required to be repaid. Dividends may be issued, may not be issued, but dividends are not tax deductible for the company that issues dividends. So you must determine for your business a mixture between debt and equity financing. So here we just have a graph that shows if I issue additional debt, in this case, we issue bonds for $200,000 at an 8% interest rate. Bonds are a liability. They do not impact our shareholders' equity, but because the bonds have, in this case, an 8% interest rate, $200,000, the interest would be $16,000. That interest does reduce our gross profit, impacts our operating profit. So our return on equity, which is our operating profit divided by shareholders' equity, is 16.8%. Compared to if I issue shares of stock, that's going to be additional equity. Now my equity is going to increase to $700,000. Even if I decide to pay out dividends, dividends are not tax deductible. So now my gross profit stays at $100,000. My return on equity is 14.3%. So notice now, because with the equity, you have more equity, which reduces your return compared to if I issue the bonds. It doesn't impact my equity, but it does reduce my operating profit, but my return on equity is going to be a little higher. So again, as a company, we must determine what's a good mix between debt financing and equity financing. That will conclude our Chapter 18 video lecture. Be sure to complete your Chapter 8 assignments by the required due date. I hope you've enjoyed this chapter and have a better understanding on financial management. Bye.